about a week or so, Brian contacted me and he said, Johnny, they all say go ahead, you know. But I couldn't have done it, the book, without the help of Brian and Charlie Grant. And I would like to thank them too, man. And I couldn't have done it without people around Donegal sending photographs and stories. Derry, Strabane, Lifford, Kerry, Melton, Mulford, Balbafay. I can't think of anybody else now, but I know they'll be all in the book anyhow. And as Brian says, thank the councillors and anybody else that gave us sponsorship, you know, like private sponsorship, you know, they give it. So I've heard so many stories, but I'll just tell you one story. There was a man telling me that, I think he's in the room tonight too, that Donegal got a very good team to play in the World Cup. They were pick of the Donegal players. And anyhow, he says, at half time they were playing Carrickfinn Emeralds. And there's a programme in that book, Carrickfinn Emeralds, Jared Kellan from Burke given me. But this was a Scotch team. I'm sure a lot of you would have heard about the Scotch boys coming over to play in the World Cup. And anyhow, I said half time they were getting 8-4-0. And years ago the managers would be kind of fairly rough, he said, you know. So the manager came out at half time and he says, if we pull one or two back, he says, you know, we could be in this game yet. So he looked at the full back and he said to the full back, he said, you know, see that wee man in the wing, he says, can you not have him a cake? And the full back said to him, what did I tell you? He says, I cannot get at him. And I think you know who I'm going to say it was. It was Jimmy Johnson. You know, and that's not a story, that's the truth. They say the man's in the room, but I'll not mention his name, like, you know. But listen, thanks for all the stories and the photographs, and thanks for everybody coming here tonight. I'm really surprised with the turnout, but I'm delighted now. And thanks again.
I counted in Barty Ramsey's book 309 appearances for Finn Harps in the league, just the league. And I think I also counted, because I was doing a bit of counting earlier, 28 appearances in the FA Cup. Of course, the big appearance was in April 1974 when he captained Finn Harps to the FA Cup victory over St Patrick's Athletic. And it was 14 years that he was at Finn Park, and a remarkable servant to Finn Park. And like many of you here, I'm sure, remember being at Finn Park on many occasions, watching him and many others, some of them, and possibly here too this evening, playing in that remarkable era for Finn Harps. Of course, he started his footballing career at Rathbone and Celtic, and then went to St Pat's, I think it was, in '68, and then a couple of years later, I think it was, to Finn Park. But what I did see on some other story was that his first senior game of football was when he was brought on as a substitute for Father Michael Sweeney, I think it was. The report said that Father Michael Sweeney was injured, not that he wasn't playing well. That's important to point out. And that was his first match at a senior level, and that was in the semi-final of the Milford Summer Cup, as I understand it. I don't actually know what happened in the match. I meant to ask him that earlier, but I never got the chance. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, you're fed up listening to me. You can tell me little or nothing about football at that level. So, may I introduce the legend that is Jim Sheridan.
I don't consider myself to be a legend at all, I can assure you that. I'm still the same fella that left Rathmullen way back in 1964 and joined the Guards. I played a bit of football, and I looked up to people that are here tonight from Rathmullen who were great members of that team, and I think in particular of Father Woolley, Father Eddie and Patsy Sheridan, and they were the people that people like me had to displace if we wanted to get a game. My father was the manager, and I can assure you that there was no despite the fact that he was very familiar with me, I didn't get any on that team unless I was fit to be on it, or was looking to be on it. I mentioned there about Father Mick. That was exactly when I started to play, I suppose, serious football for Rathmullen. It was in the Milford Cup, and it was the semi-final, and Father Mick was right half back, Father Willie was centre half, and Teddy Binney was left half. And I often ask myself, how the hell would a fellow like me manage to get onto that team? And that's the way it was. My father Mick got hurt, so I played in the semi-final, and that was played against Letterkenny Rovers actually, and we beat Letterkenny in the semi-final, and the final we beat Kilrums. That was my introduction, I suppose, to Summer Cups. But I watched Summer Cups for years, and we're here to talk about Summer Cups. And basically, due to the fact that my father was the manager, I suppose, and player manager of Rathmullen for so many years, our house was a house where football was played, where football was spoken about all the time. And I can remember my late mother washing the jerseys, and there was no linen dryers, and there was no fancy washing machines, I can assure you, way back in the 40s and the 50s, or the 60s either. And that's the way it was. But they were a very successful team in Rathmullen, and I won't go too much into it because it's all in the book, and you can read it all. And it's good to see so many people here from other particular clubs tonight that would have interacted with down the years, played with them, played against them, and it's great to see them here. And this publication I just got a quick glance through it. I have never seen it either, but I've no doubt that a lot of credit, as we've heard, goes to Johnny and his committee from Letterkenny Heritage Group for putting this together. I know Johnny spoke to me at least 2 years ago about it, to see what I had in relation to it. But it turned out I had quite a lot, and a lot of people wouldn't realise this because my dad was an unusual individual. Anybody that knew him, and he had a diary, and in that diary was every match that Rathmullen Celtic played in about 10 years, from around, well, I think it was 57 or so, or 67, so 57 to 67. He had it all recorded, and he had recorded the venue where the match was, what cup it was, what was the score, and the team. So basically all that was there, and it was all available. And that was certainly something that he was very meticulous about. And you know, he was meticulous about everything, but he was particularly meticulous about football. And he definitely, when he was playing himself, I didn't see him play too often, but when he was playing himself, he was a tough enough nut to say, I don't know what he was like, but anyway, he didn't get many passes, I'm told, anyway. But then again, you know, I talked about that team that I got into at the beginning. That night, I think Patsy McGowan was the goalkeeper, right back was Father Eddie, and left back was Father Dan, centre, or the three half backs were Father Mick Sweeney, Father Willie McMenamin, and Teddy Blinny. And I can tell you they were a tough half back. And you come up a bit further then, and you have the likes of John Patton and Jim Kennedy, I think, was in that team as well. And you see, I think Lachlan may have been in it, I'm not sure. James Doherty probably was in it. And I'm not going to say that I can write them all off, because I'm an old man now and I kind of forget things. So that's the best I can. I got 10 out of 11, I didn't do too badly. But anyway, I think that's a great publication when you see what work Johnny did. I'm aware as well of what amount of work that Johnny did in relation to this, because he would be on to me quite often and forwarding various stuff. But he had everything that I could give him, and he has everything that anybody here in this room could give him as well. So I no doubt that this is a great publication. And really, you know, the Summer Cups were serious stuff. And I did play for a lot of years in the League of Ireland, but I can tell you one thing, I probably got more satisfaction out of winning a cup in Remelton in the final than I would anywhere else. And that's true, because Remelton, and I know there's great Remelton men here and friends of my own here as well from Remelton. And basically the thing about it was there was a bit of rivalry between Rathmullen and Remelton. We were very close neighbours. And the Swilly Cup had something very special. And if you won that, you didn't care if you won any other cup. But that's the way it was in the day, and it was all enjoyable. And definitely, it was great. And I know that everybody here can talk about their own teams, whether it's Milford, Kerryart, Remelton, Letterkenny, all those towns, Buncrana, and as well as that, we went up playing in places like Cookstown, and we played in Cookstown, and we played in Omagh. And in those particular tournaments in those days, if you're playing in Cookstown, as Father William and Patsy Sheridan and Father Eddie would tell you, basically you were really against senior players, because it was a close season. The Summer Cups were summer. There was no football in Northern Ireland. The league wasn't being played at that time. It was over. The season was closed. And the same with Dublin. And in Dublin, Rathmullen met Dublin United, which were all senior players and clubs in Dublin. And you know, and you read the book, it's probably not in this book, but having said that, I could produce figures that would tell you that we lost the semi-final in Omagh to Dublin United. And Dublin United beat Rathmullen Celtic because Dublin United got 2 corners and Rathmullen Celtic got 1. And there's corner kicks. There was 2 matches were decided no on corner kicks, which was a bit unfair in one way, but that's the way it was because we couldn't keep going. There were up two replays and then went to corner kicks, so that was it. So we almost had a feather in our cap by beating that Dublin United team. But that's all history too. But that just gives you an idea how people were coming out. I was at that match, by the way, in Moville that Johnny's talking about, where Prewood United were playing against Carfin Emeralds. And they were all senior players from Scotland came over here, and they did win the cup. They won the Moville Cup that year. And Jimmy Johnson was the man Johnny had mentioned about playing in the right wing, and he certainly could play, as we all know. And he did give their left back, who was a good friend of mine, a bit of a chasing. But he would give anybody a bit of a chasing. This was an international, Scots international later on, and he was a great player. But that's what you're up against. But there were great days. And you know, I'm sure there's so many stories that you all could tell from your various towns and villages all over the north of Donegal that would be in a similar vein as what I've been talking about here as far as Rathmullen was concerned. And I suppose, you know, later years when Father Willie and Patsy hadn't retired at the time. Father Willie had for some reason. Father Willie was there all his life and Father Eddie too. But we played in the final of the Melton Cup sometime in the 60s, and we played against the Derry team in the final, and basically we had almost a complete local team in Fanet and Rathmullen, and we beat them 4-2, and to me that was as good a performance as we ever put in now. Father Willie and Father Eddie and Patsy Sheridan, would have been playing every night. They put in a great performance, but I'll just give you an idea of the team. Ernie McGarvey from Ramelton was the goalkeeper. And right back was my brother Joe from Buncrana, now he's living in Buncrana, and John Doherty from Fanet was the left back. And the middle 3 was James Kerr from Fanet was right half, I was centre half, and John Kelly from Rathmullen was left half. Now as you're reading the book, maybe, I'm not sure, but the forward line was something else. And the outside right was John Patton from Rathmullen, and inside him was Patsy Sheridan. The centre forward was Tommy Patton from Rathmullen. And inside left was James Doherty from Fanet, and outside left was Father Francis McAteer. And we beat a star-studded Derry team because it was basically made up of fellas who were playing senior football as well. Now, it's true that we beat them well, and I don't apologise if Jobby was here, I'd be saying that too. But anyway, this was a team called Shelburne, and those of you that are of our 5 vintage or near enough to will know that Shelburne is a very, very successful team. And the Digger was the manager of Shelburne, and he wasn't too happy at getting beaten in the Melton Cup, but we were very, very happy with that. As a matter of interest, I was expecting to see Jobby here tonight, and it's great to hear how Jobby was a very, very good footballer. He was the captain of Manchester City when they got promotion to the first division as it was then, and he played in Belgium a lot, and he was a real ambassador for Irish football at the time, crossing over to Belgium and playing there. And it's just a pity he can't be with us, but he's ill, so he can't be here. And again, I often heard my dad talking about the Crossons, and I'm sure he talked a lot about Eddie Crossan, and Eddie Crossan obviously was a brother of Jobby's. And we've known Jimbo Crossan myself, who was my older brother. He was playing centre half for Derry City at a time, and he wasn't a big man, but I can tell you one thing, not too many won footballs above him, because he had a great head of a ball, and he could spring up there and head it out of the world. Anyway, you listened to me for long enough, and basically I'm delighted to have been asked to come here and to launch this particular publication. I'm not a legend, I never was a legend, I never considered myself a legend. As far as Finn Harps are concerned, I was in the right place at the right time. I was lucky, I was playing on a great team, and we had great success. I suppose, you know, people are worrying now about Harps. Harps are relegated this season, which we're not happy about, but having said that, that's the way it goes. But in the time that we were there, let's say we played in Europe on 4 occasions. We won the FAI Cup, and we were runners-up 3 or 4 times in the league. 3 times actually in the league we were runners-up, and that's the one thing that sticks in me craw a little bit, is that we didn't win a league, because we were good enough to win it, but for some reason, against the superior teams like Cork Hibs and Waterford and Shamrock Rovers, we could beat them. But then some team like Home Farm or Shelburne in the day might take points off us, and that's why we lost the league. So we'll go to blame by ourselves. And again, one man that's not here tonight, and that's Patsy. Patsy would be a great friend of mine too, as well as Father William, Father Eddie and Patsy Sheridan. And he contributed an awful lot to Rathmullen, Celtic, as well as to Finn Harps. And in actual fact, I talk to him very regularly. I talk to him every couple of months, and he's in good form, and delighted about that. And unfortunately, as I say, Harps have gone down, but hopefully they'll come back up again. It's not going to be easy because it's difficult now to have a senior team, and it's difficult to get players to come and stay in Donegal. Ollie lost 10 or 11 players last season. I'm sure you're all aware of that. And he lost a football team really before the season. And last season, I just read in the paper a few days ago, this year Harps won 4 matches and in the whole season, and they got relegated. Now last year they won 11 matches and they had 40 points, so that was a great display that year. They did very, very well. So basically, why did they not do as well this year? Well, out of that team that got those 40 points, 11 players left. So that's what you're up against, really. So anyway, just to say thanks for the committee for inviting me here. I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to see so many people that I know down through the years, and I no doubt that you'll be reminiscing about what's in that book, and you might even think about having to come back another night to discuss what's in it when you read it all, because there are a lot of stories in that book, I can assure you. So again, just to finish up, again, it was a privilege to play for Rathmullen Celtic in the Summer Cups, I can assure you, and I mean it when I say I got as much satisfaction out of winning a cup final in Milford or in Melton than anywhere else. So enjoy the rest of your night, and congratulations to the Heritage Group for what they've done, and Johnny in particular, and safe home to everybody. Thank you.